that only half of the class have submitted activity 2. Okay, it's not brilliant either. Activity 3, again, half of the class has submitted it, but we'll speak about it again because submissions are not very good. Okay, so for people who haven't completed activity 1, you just have 1 week left. Okay, after that, next week I will be publishing your marks for activity 1. So if you have completed it, you will get 4%. If you didn't, you will get 0. And that will be the end of the story for activity 1. Okay, so some feedback. So some people said it was hard. So welcome to university. Okay. Freshers Week is in the past. Okay. Submissions have been poor. Okay, I've started marking them, and I've discovered that half of you had failed. Okay, so I decided, okay, it's not point marking anymore, you know. So I'm going to give you some detailed feedback, and if you feel that your submission was not good enough, submit again. Okay, because as I say, half of you have failed basically the submission. Some people were a bit worrying that their research time would not be taken into account. I mean, I have been running this module for 5 years now, and you know, I'm able to appreciate your work. I'm seeing 200 activities each month, and I'm able to make the difference between the people who didn't do anything, just filling the form with random numbers, and people who spend a lot of time. So don't worry, if you spend time, you make the effort of doing the research. Maybe you are not going to be correct for every question, but if your reflection is good, you will get the point. Okay, numbers. That has been a disaster. Okay, we had a whole lecture last week about numbers that we have in computing. So, I mean, you don't need to read that. It's just to see that how many comments, at least 20 people said, I couldn't do the conversion between the numbers, I don't understand the numbers. And a lot of the comments are just pure ridiculous. I mean, they are from lazy people. That was in the lecture material. You know, I've produced a few slides. People were not even bothered going through the slides. Okay. How does we convert from decimal to hexadecimal? There was examples in the slides as well. Someone said that they didn't find any online converter. I mean, I provide you a link to an online converter. I mean, some of you are really taking the piss, to be honest. Yeah? I mean, I'm getting a bit angry, you know. Because, I mean, more of that and those people will not have a second chance, you know. Asking such stupid questions is just 0 and go to the next activity. I mean, if you cannot read the slides, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Okay, so let's look at the slides again, because, I mean, I understand that some slides may not be clear, but some of the questions are, you know, on this slide I said 8 bits form 1 byte. Okay, so how can you, what is unclear about that? Yeah. Here is the numbers when you needed to do some conversions. So if you had a piece of RAM with 4 giga of RAM, gigabyte, here you know how many, how much is a giga. Okay, so it's a bit more than 1 million. And I gave specific example how to convert from 1 base to decimal. So how to convert a binary number to decimal. And similarly, how to convert a number which is hexadecimal into decimal. And what you needed for this activity is how to convert a decimal number into either binary or hexadecimal. Okay, so that's the slide with the answer. So if I, for example, I wanted to convert a number 41 in decimal to binary, what I needed to do is to divide 41 by 2. It's equal to 20, remaining is 1. I divide 20 by 2 again. It's equal to 10, remaining 0. 10 by 2 is 5. 5 by 2 is 2, remaining 1. And 2 by 2 is 1, remaining 0. And your conversion is over. The 41 in binary is 101001. Okay? And if you wanted to do it in hexadecimal, you would not divide by 2, you would divide by 16. Okay? So that was the hard way if you wanted to answer this question. The alternative was to use this converter, and I provided you a link. Okay? So people say I spend hours looking for a converter. I mean, what's that rubbish about? Okay? So if I have 1024 bits, it means that I have this number in binary, and in hexadecimal it's 400. Okay? So now if we come back to the activity itself, so many people couldn't do that. I mean, I couldn't understand what the problem was. So let's look at an example. I have picked a piece of RAM. It has 52 megabytes. Okay. 512. Yeah, 512. It's good you are following. 512 megabytes. So in order to understand how many bits there are in 502 megabytes, first we need to understand what a mega is and what a byte is. Yeah? So a mega is 1048,576. A byte is 8 bits. Okay? So how many bits are there in 512 megabytes? You multiply the three numbers and you get this number. Okay? So that's the number of bits in decimal for that RAM. Okay? Ask me questions because, you know, I think it's quite straightforward. So now we have this number. What I can do is to go to my converter. And here are the answers. Okay? It's quite tough, yeah? How many degrees do you need in order to be able to do that? Okay? So that gives you the answer in both binary and hexadecimal. Okay? So you have the lecture slides if something is unclear. And if it's still a problem, you can either have a chat with your mentors who have mastered the art of converting numbers, or you can try some other tutorials on the web. Okay? There are hundreds. I give you one link. Okay, so that was the first obstacle. And as I said, almost half of the class couldn't do that. Which is, you can tell me, it's quite poor. Yeah? Then there was the issue about the ATM. Okay, I wanted you to do a bit of investigation. And again, more than 20 people said, yeah, I didn't know what to do about the ATM. I left the no answer because I don't know what RAM and stuff there is. Okay? So first of all, I provided you some instruction. Okay? When I provided the activity, I said in certain cases you are not going to find the information. Okay? I know that Apple, for example, is very protective about its hardware, so it may not give you all the details about the microprocessor of your iPhone. Okay? And for the ATM, I know it's difficult to find the information. So I said if you cannot find the specifications of the machine, you use your best guess. Okay? So someone said, I took an estimated guess, is it right? Yeah, I asked you to do it. So of course it's right. Some people did some quite good research and they managed to get some information. Okay? They managed to find out that what you have in ATM machine is a PC running Windows XP. Okay? So that should give you some information about what type of machine is it. Is it the latest PC with the highest technology with 8 core? No. Or is it just an old machine that some secretary in the agency, the bank agency, doesn't want to use anymore because it's too slow? It's still running on XP and they are using that as an ATM. Okay? So that should give you enough information to have some idea about what kind of RAM they are using and what kind of hard disk they need, you know. It looks like they're just using an old computer that nobody wants anymore because the task is so basic. Yeah? Then there were a few alternative questions. Okay? So when I said compare with the standard components, so either when you go to the website you have a standard machines that you can upgrade and get some better components, or if you are doing your work in a different way, you can use, for example, the PC which is at Kingston University Library as a standard PC. Okay, it's not high-end, it's not made for video games or anything, it's just a standard machine. So how could you compare your components with such a type of machine, which is quite cheap and delivering okay service? So obviously I want the technical features about those components. Okay, in the questions I want the speed, I want the RAM, I want all those details. When you need to compare between you needed to compare between smartphone, PC, and the ATM. Okay. So what type of comparison? I'm not interested to know that one microprocessor is 10% faster than the other one. That's not what I'm interested in. If you look at the values, if you have done the research, you will find out that a PC, a modern PC, has a speed which is expressed in gigahertz. Yeah? Did you find that? Whereas if you are looking at the speed of what you have on your smartphone, it's going to be hundreds of megahertz. That's the interesting thing. So it's 10 times faster on your PC. Why is it 10 times faster? Is it bigger? Is it size the problem?
When we heat up so much, they might.
Yeah, during the lecture last week, we saw that the PC had a fan that size to cool down the processor. Where do you put it in your mobile? You cannot do it. And you don't want a mobile overheating while you have it in your pocket. Okay? So, I mean, it's very simple. It's not that it's a problem, it's not so much of a problem of size, it's that the faster your CPU is going, the more heat it's producing. So there's a limitation. Okay? So that's what I would like to see in the answer to your question. So the numbers are not that important. What's important is it's 10 times faster. And why is it 10 times faster? Yeah? Okay, so question about why are my components for video games different? That's the aim of the research. And you have to understand why some components are more suitable for video games and others are more suitable for other activities. Someone was not quite sure about if the headphone jack was an input or an output. So is there any data going from the outside world into the computer through that port? No, so you are not going to affect how your machine is working by plugging a headphone. Okay. On the other hand, what you are going to get from the computer may affect you. Okay, if you are listening to happy, maybe you will feel more energized. Again, in the question what I'm asking you to compare architectures, I'm not interested in the design in the sense of how pretty it is. It's more about the hardware. Okay, what are the functionalities? What kind of input device, output device? What is inside the box, which is fundamentally different between the different types of devices. Okay, so I think you have had now quite a lot of feedback. So if you feel that your submission was far from what I've explained to you now, I would just suggest resubmitting. Okay. Resubmission is easy. You just use the form the same way as before. So for the questions you are happy with, just do a copy and paste from your receipt. Okay. I've noticed that this week still have 3 or 4 people who are not able to spell Kingston.
Wow.
So these people didn't get the receipt. Okay. The G missing, or I don't know. So some people are not good in math, cannot do the calculation, but they cannot write Kingston either. Okay. Okay, so let's start now the lecture itself. Okay, some new material. As you can see, the rhythm in IT Toolbox is quite high. You know, there's some new stuff every week, a new activity every week, and you really need to keep up. Okay, if you don't keep up, you will have serious problems. And already some people are in trouble. Okay, people who haven't submitted activity 1 are already far behind, and things are getting more complicated, and there are more activities all the time. Hopefully, your mentors will help, but you know, it should be coming from you in particular. You have to put the effort. Okay, so if we look at a web page, we can say that there are 3 main components. Okay, so there is what we can call the content, so that's the information. There is the structure of the web page, how it's organized, and then there is the style, you know, how pretty basically it looks like. Okay, so that's 3 different elements of a web page, and each of those elements are dealt with in a different manner. Okay, so typically, if you are using a content management system such as WordPress, what you will really worry about is the content. Okay, all the work is to enter the content. The structure and the style will be just a few clicks here and there. Okay. However, when you build a website from scratch, you have to deal with the 3 levels. Okay. So the content also have 2 elements. It can be static, so you put it on your website, and that's going never to change. Okay, so that's going to be text, images, videos, and links, for example. But your content can be also dynamic, which allows the user to interact with your web page. Okay, so that's a dynamic content. And in order to do that, you need what is called scripting languages. And actually, there are programming languages. And two that we'll be studying in this class will be JavaScript and PHP. Anybody programming in those languages already? 1, 2, 3. Okay. So that's about the content. And today we just use static content. So we let on the side those programming languages. Then there is a structure. And in order to define the structure of a web page, what is used is called HTML. Yeah, you must have heard about that. That's the suffix of most websites. And then you have to worry about what is called a style, and that is done using another language called CSS. So today we are going to look at HTML and CSS. Okay, so let's go back to our first web page ever. Yeah, you remember that one? For this little project called the World Wide Web, which started a bit more than around 25 years ago. So you can see that obviously there is content, there is structure. Okay, you can see that there are indentation, so that you have some kind of titles and you have some text, and obviously it's full of links, as you would expect. And one of the most important features on your mouse is the right button. Okay, so when you are on a website and you want to understand how it has been designed, okay, just click on the right button and say View Source. And that's the HTML code of that web page. Okay? So that's what we are going to do today. We are going to learn how to do that type of language. So you can see that here we have this sentence, this title, World Wide Web, and here we have something which seems to be corresponding. Then we have a whole paragraph here which corresponds to those lines. Okay, so you can see that if you want to understand how to make titles, how to change the structure of your document, you can have already a lot of information just by looking at the source of a web page you are interested in. Okay? If you want to duplicate something you find interesting, just try the right button and see how they did it. Okay? Okay, so let's look at the details now. Okay, so how to format a document. One way of doing it is using what is called a WYSIWYG software. Does anybody know what WYSIWYG means?
I think it means like unique, right? What you see, what you get.
Exactly. What you see is what you get. Okay? Very important concept. So any software which is WYSIWYG, Microsoft Word. Okay? If you want to make the text pretty, you want to add an indentation, what you have on your computer screen is what you are going to get when you print it out. Okay? What you see on the screen is what you get. It's almost true. Yeah? But it's a very good example of a WYSIWYG piece of software. However, many software don't work that way. Okay? And you have seen the example here. That's how you write the web page. It has nothing to do with how it looks like. It's not WYSIWYG. And that's what you are going to be using. So those type of languages are called markup languages. So you are going to give some instructions about how to represent the data. So you are, conceptually, you are going to say, I want an indentation of 3 centimeters. So it's going to be exactly 3 centimeters. But when you look at the document in your text editor, you will just see 3 centimeters. Okay. So you could say, yeah, that's quite a lot of pain. Okay, I can do something very nice WYSIWYG with Microsoft Word. So first of all, you need to know that in the editing industry, in the edition, they don't use Word. They don't use stuff which is WYSIWYG. They use markup languages. Why? Because it's extremely precise. Okay? The order you are providing are very precise. If you say each indentation needs to be 3 centimeters, that's end of the story. In Word, some people will write a text and they will say, okay, here I've got 2 spaces, 3 spaces, 4 spaces for the indentation. And when you look at the document, it's not really looking professional. Okay? So if you want to write a book, do something extremely professional, it's unlikely you will be using Microsoft Word. Okay? It's nice for little pieces of work, but for big professional stuff, for making printing a newspaper, writing books, you are not going to use Word. Okay? You are not going to use something which is WYSIWYG. You are going to use something much more powerful, which is using these markup languages. So among those markup languages, there is HTML. So that's the one we are the most concerned with today. There is XML, that you may have heard of before. And there is something which is called LaTeX. Okay. LaTeX is a very powerful Word text editor, which allows you to write like the logo LaTeX looks like. You cannot do that with Word. Okay? But in LaTeX, by giving the exact commands, you will produce the exact result that you want. Okay? So it's much more powerful, but it's not open to any user. Okay? And as IT professionals, obviously, you need to be able to use those types of markup languages. Yeah? So HTML, first of all, it's not a programming language. It's a markup language. Nothing to do with programming. How many times I see people with written on their CV, yeah, I know a programming language which is HTML. No, that's ridiculous. That means that you know nothing about programming. Okay. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It was invented by Tim Berners-Lee in '91, the inventor of the web. And now we are in the version 5 of HTML. There is an alternative to HTML, which is called XHTML. Okay, X for extensible HTML. And basically, it's using what is called the XML framework, which is another type of markup language, and extending HTML with that framework. Okay. So it's allows you to do a bit more than what HTML allows you to do. But we are only going to concentrate on HTML in this course. But you need to be aware that XML, XHTML exists and extend HTML. It's not a big deal to move from one to another, to the other one. So why do you need to know about HTML? Okay. If you have already investigated a bit with your WordPress software, you can already create some fantastic websites. Okay. So why should you try to do something differently? First of all, you need to understand how WordPress works. Okay, you are going to be an IT professional. Maybe your next project will be to produce WordPress version 2 or 3. Okay? someone has to program WordPress, so you need to understand what is inside, okay? And maybe one of you will be part of the team involved in that. Also, you want to be in total control, okay? When you are using WordPress, you have to make some choices, you know. I want this type of design of that one. I want that type of titles and those ones. You just have menus and you choose. If you know about HTML, you can do whatever you want. Okay? You are not limited by the options that WordPress is offering. Okay? Which means that a good web developer is not going to use only WordPress. He's going to start with WordPress to give you a basis, and then he's going to add new functionalities, which is going to make the difference. Okay? Because WordPress, really anybody can use it. You learn how to use it in less than a week. Yeah. So what is the added value that you can provide as a web designer if the only thing you know is WordPress? Yeah? So when you know HTML, you have total control of what is displayed on a website. Also, if you know HTML, you are ready to work across platforms. Okay? If you want to work on iPhone and PC at the same time. Okay? And obviously, we need HTML if you want to become a professional web developer. There's no easy way out. Okay, so HTML is not very complex, and here we have maybe the minimal HTML document. It's very simple. HTML is based on what is called tags. Okay, so my first tag is HTML, just to telling the browser this is an HTML document. And the HTML document starts in line 1 and will end in line 5. Okay, so you are using a forward slash to say that's the end of the area concerned by that tag. Okay, so the HTML tag concerns everything between line 1 and 5. So your HTML page is going to have a body. That's what the main content of your page is going to be in the body. Okay? So you have a tag called body. So that's where the body starts, and that's where the body ends. And then I can put my content. My name is JC. So if we go on my website, here is my web page. Okay? It's exactly the code that I've shown you. If I use the source, I can see the content of the web page. Yeah? So you can see that creating a web page from scratch is not very complex. You can do it in 5 lines. So in order to create those files, you need a text editor. So you can use something like Notepad++, for example. Notepad++ is quite good because it can recognize that you are working with HTML. So it's going to put some pretty colors on your tags, and it's going to say, oh, but you have opened a tag, but you haven't closed it. Okay? So Notepad++ will help you to create some nice, to write your HTML code. Okay? Also, it's going to provide you some automatic indentation, so you have a nice structure and you can follow your code. You could, in principle, use Notepad, but you are not going to get those functionalities. So maybe you want to download Notepad++, it's free. Yeah. Other people will use other type of tools. Maybe Emacs is some for people more using Linux type of environment. So an HTML file is a text file. Okay, it's just text. There's nothing hidden. You create it from scratch, and it's human readable and human writable. In principle, you could understand any HTML file. And we have already seen a couple of tags. So HTML tag and the body tag. Obviously, that's not enough, and in particular on the content side of things. So here I've added a bit of content on my web page. So who I am, what I do, what I like, and so on. Would you like to see the web page? So if we look at the web page, here it is. Anything interesting?
No.
Just, it's not very pretty. Yeah. Why is it not pretty?
Doesn't have CSS.
Because there is no structure. HTML is not WYSIWYG. Okay, so I may have spent a bit of time on my document trying to put a bit of structure with spaces and so on, but HTML is not going to understand that. You know, for HTML, if you don't give strict commands, okay, using tags, it puts everything one after the other. Okay, so you need some specific tags in order to create your structure. So you need to learn a few structure tags. Okay, so here you can see that, for example, I have a tag which is the head. If a web page has a body, it's likely it's going to have a head as well. My web page is going to have a title. My web page is going to have section names, may have some lists, images, and so on. Okay, so there are tags specialized in all those elements. So if we now look at my web page using those tags, is my web page. Okay, so you can see that there is a basic structure. It's not particularly pretty, but now the organization is okay. Yeah. So let's look at the details of a few tags, the most important ones. So for example, I have this tag H1, which tells me it's a header of level 1. Okay, so that's one of the main titles in my web page. I have also headers of level 2. Okay, so they will not be as big as the level 1. You can see the web page here. Okay. What else do we have here? I have a list with bullet points. Okay. So the list has the UL tag, and the bullet points has the LI tag. I mean, that's a standard list. You can have lists with numbers as well. Okay. And it's another tag which allows you to do that. What else? Here, I want to display an image on my web page. Okay. So I need to say where is the location of the image. Okay. I have to give the full path or the relative path, where I am, and how to go from where I am to my image. What is the width, and what is the height of my image. What else do we have? We have this tag, which allows you to get a new line. We have this tag I, which allows you to put the text in italics. Okay. Obviously, you have a tag which allows you to put your text in bold, if you want. And then here, I have a tag which is href, which allow me to create a link. Okay, so here I have a link to the website of NASA. Okay, and everything which is between this tag href and /a is going to be the text which will be the link. Okay, so here the link will have the text NASA. Okay, so if we go on my web page again, we can see that I have this link here, which allows me to go to the website of NASA. I have also some kind of link which allow me for people to send me automatically an email. Okay. So there are standard functionality that you will find on every web page. Okay. And finally we have this tag which allow you to get a new paragraph. Okay. What else do we have? You can see that I have also a name for my web page. I call it the Mimimi page. Okay, so let's go there. The browser, yeah, Mimimi page. You can see it. So where is it coming from? You look at the source and you say, oh, my web page has a title which is called Mimimi page. Okay, so you can put all the elements you want for your web page using those tags. Okay. So you can see that creating a web page, you don't need WordPress, you don't need anything. You just need a text editor and you type down what you want to have. Okay. So you have the content, then you have the structure, which is done using those tags. Anything missing? When we started the lecture, I said we need 3 elements in order to do a web page. Style. Okay, because my web page looks still a bit 90s-like. Okay, a bit boring. Okay, everything in black and white. So what about style? So when HTML was created, there were special tags for style. Okay, so you could say, okay, this text, I will use a given font, a given size, a given color. Okay, so that was the old way of doing style in HTML. However, again, you can see it's not very consistent. So you can have several titles of the same levels, and because you have made an error typing your code, you will get one title in red and the other title in green. Okay? Which is the case here. It's not very logical that titles of the same type have different colors. But since each type I have to provide the whole information, there is scope for making mistakes. Okay? So that was the old way of doing it. Now, style has been put away from HTML. Okay? We are not using tags anymore for styles. What we are using is another language, which is CSS. So basically, CSS is a way to create style sheets. Okay? So that will give the style to your document. And which means also that a document, you will have the content and the structure in one side and the style in another. Which is very good when you are, for example, rebranding a website. You don't want to change the content, you don't want to change the structure, but maybe you want to change all the logos, all the main colors on your website. And you don't want to change all the pages. So using CSS, you will have your style sheet, and you just need to change the style sheet in order to create a website which looks very different. Okay? So let's have a look at the beautiful websites I've created. Okay, so that's using one style sheet. Looks a bit boring, but I've added some special effects. Okay. So that's my website using one style sheet. Now I have exactly the same website, same HTML, same structure, but I've changed the style sheet, and I have this nice girly look, which suits me a lot. Yeah. Okay. So you can see I haven't changed any line of code. What I've done is switch from one style to another style. Okay. So that's the power of the style sheet. So I can have a whole website, and all the pages of my website link to the same style sheet. So you are sure to get a website which will be very consistent. Okay? All the pages with the same style. Obviously, you have the freedom to say, okay, this page is special, I'm going to use another style. That's not an issue. Okay, so how do you use CSS? There are two ways of doing it. And there are advantages and disadvantages of the two ways, and it depends on what you are trying to do. So what you can do is in the head part to say, okay, I have a link to a style sheet that in this case is called Spring. Okay, spring.css. That's my girly looking style sheet. Since this style sheet is the latest version of HTML, you need to add an extra tag, okay, saying that you are using the latest version of HTML. So you have this HTML tag, but you add an extra one saying I'm using the latest version which take into account the style sheet. Okay. And the style sheet itself looks like that. Okay. So it's very simple. For any type of text here, I'm going to say that my body is going to have a background. The background of the page will be aquamarine. Okay. The letters will be pink, and the font will be 22 Arial, and I'm going to center all my my text. Okay, so that's what we get here. You can see this nice aquamarine background. You can see that the normal text is in pink and it's been centered. Okay?
Looks white.
Excuse me? Looks white? No, it's pink. Yeah? Is it pink? No, it's white. Yes. So it's pink on my web page. The project seems to have problems with colors. Okay. So trust me, it's pink. Yeah? Sorry about that.
On the video, it's pink.
On the video, it's pink. Okay. So when you will be watching the YouTube video, you will find it pink. Okay. And then I have some information for each header. Okay. So the top header, I want them to be indigo, so some kind of blue. And here is the size. I want the size of 142, and I'm using this font. All my headers, I'm going to use the same font and the same color. However, I'm going to use different sizes, obviously, because they are more and more, less and less important, so I make them smaller and smaller. Okay. So if we go back here, we can see that's my indigo, Yeah, it looks indigo, that's more or less. And you can see the different type of sizes. And you can see also the fancy type of fonts that I've used for the headers. Okay? So for the content, I'm using Arial, and for the headers, I'm going to use something different. Okay? So you can see that using CSS, you are fully in control of the style. You can do exactly what you want. What you need is to have good text, which maybe not my case. So that's one way of applying styles. Within your HTML head tag, you're just saying use the style sheet, which is at that location. Another way of doing it is within the header again. You are just you are creating a style header, and you are putting the content of your style sheet there. Okay. So you can see that exactly the same information is here and there. So that's another way of using the style sheet. So you can imagine that if a question?
Yeah, so I was just asking, like, you know, how is this text indented this way?
How? Why?
Like why or how? Whatever.
You don't need to indent anything, but the text editor that I'm using is doing it automatically. So this Notepad plus, so that everything looks structured, and I can see where start the tags and where finish the tags. And it puts some nice colors on tags and keywords. Okay, so that's why it's better to use one of these advanced text editing software, because it organizes all very nicely. But HTML doesn't care. Okay, you can write everything on all the line under each other. It will work same thing. Yeah. So you can see there are two ways of expressing your CSS. Okay. So you can imagine that if there is a general style in your website, you are going to create one file with that, and all your web page will be linked to that page, to that style page. However, if there is only one page which is going to be slightly different, then on that page, maybe you are going to create create your style in that page itself. Okay? What you want is not to duplicate information, because each time you duplicate, you lose consistency. And at some point, it starts diverging, and each web page looks different, and it doesn't look professional anymore. Okay? So I've told you that CSS was how to make some style sheets, but there is a C, okay? And C stands for cascade. Okay? Cascade means that there is some kind of hierarchy. So when you are creating a web page, you can put the style at different levels. If you want, you can still put the old-fashioned HTML tags for the style. Okay? So if you can call a CSS page, but for a specific title, you want it to be in a different color. So you are going to use the color tag. So the whole page will follow the CSS style, but when it's going, the browser is going to reach your line where you have an inline style using your tags, is the inline style which is going to win. Okay? By default is the CSS file, but if you have something inline, that's what will be applied. Okay? So you can see there's the concept of hierarchy. So the one which wins is the one which is the tags inside the text. The second one is the one which is in the file, in the header. Okay? If you don't give the details in the header, that's the ones which will be applied, whatever style sheet you are going to link. Okay? Then you can have the external style sheets. That's the one we have seen previously. And then your browser have a style sheet, a default style sheet. So if it cannot find a style sheet, it will apply its own style sheet, which is going to be basic. The advantage of this cascade is that you don't have to reinvent a style for everything all the time. You can say, okay, generally, my browser style sheet is okay. But for the particular style of my website, I want to be in control of the background and the titles. For the rest, I'm just using the standard one. Okay? So that may be what your website is about. And then when you are dealing about a specific web page, you say, in this web page, I'm going to overwrite what is in the general style, or what is it in the style file, and I'm going to choose a different style for some elements. You don't have to overwrite everything. You can just change one or two. If there is no information, it's going one level higher in the hierarchy in order to find it. Okay, so we have seen structure. We have seen style. Okay, so you can see that the concepts are very simple. Okay, it's a different framework than what you have been using so far, but it's not rocket science either. We have seen a few tags. We have seen a few ways of expressing style in CSS. Now, if you want to do something more fancy, look on the web. Okay, you will have hundreds of tags. And it's not my task to go through each tag in front of you, okay? When you are looking for, you have a practical need for a tag, look for it. If you see something you like on a web page, just use the right button of your mouse and say what kind of styles they use in order to do that, or what tags do they use for doing that, okay? Everything is available. You can learn from examples. Okay, so now let's speak a bit about the content. So we have the static content. So that's the web page I've created so far. Okay, so static, because each time you go on the web page, you are going to get the same stuff. It's only if I start editing it and adding a few lines that you will find something else. So basically those websites are a bit boring. You go once, you read the content, and then you never go again. Okay, because it's always the same. Or you have specific, except if someone is just updating it continuously, which is very rare. Okay. So what you want, if you want people to come back to your website, is to have some dynamic content. So the user can interact with the web page. Or the web page is automatically putting up some new content, okay? Automatically. So you don't have to do it yourself. So, and that can be done using what is called scripting languages. Okay? They are programming languages. So they are tough. Yeah? It's not what we have seen before. And these scripting languages are added within your HTML code. Your web page is HTML, and there's a bit which is going to be dynamic that you are going to write in a specific programming language. Okay? And we will see JavaScript and PHP for doing that. So, we saw the concept of client server. Okay? So when you are surfing the web, okay, you are typing an address, and you are going to retrieve the data from that website. Okay, everything is on a server far away. So if this website has been written in HTML and JavaScript, the server is going to send you back the HTML and the JavaScript, which means that your browser understands HTML and understands JavaScript. Okay? However, there is another language which is called PHP, and it works completely differently. Okay? Because the problem is that your browser cannot understand PHP. Okay? Your browser cannot understand PHP. So if you want to access a web page which has been written in PHP, the process is a bit more complicated. So basically, you are going to request the web page, and the web page has been written in PHP, so the server has to execute the PHP. Because your browser cannot execute it, cannot understand it. So the server is doing all the hard work. It's using your PHP, the PHP which is on the server, and doing all the calculation, all the retrieval of data. Okay? So they have some kind of PHP preprocessor, and it's going to retrieve, generally when you are using PHP, you are going to retrieve data from a database. So it's going to retrieve all those stuff, and it's going to convert the initial web page, which is written in PHP, into a HTML web page. So it's going to do a translation. The PHP web page is going to be translated in HTML, and this translation is going to be sent to your browser. Okay? So we are going to look at an example which will clarify, hopefully, everything. So let's look at one of my web pages. In JavaScript. Okay? So that's the same web page as before. Okay? I didn't put any of the horrible styles because they're just there for shocking you. However, I've added a bit of JavaScript in my web page, and now my web page is able to offer a calculator. Okay? So now my web page is a bit more useful than before, because if you need a calculator, just go to my web page and use it. Okay? And that's what JavaScript is doing. I mean, it's just a very basic example, but in JavaScript you can do a lot of things. Okay? You can put a video game there if you want. On my web page, you can play a video game. So you can see the difference with dynamic content, where you can interact with the web page, and static content, where the content is always the same, and you are just reading or looking at it. Okay? So if we look a bit more at the details, in the head of my HTML page, in the tag, I'm going to say I'm using JavaScript. Okay, I'm using a scripting language. It's JavaScript, and I have a file with all the code, which is called calculate.javascript. Yeah. So here is my web page itself. So all that stuff is just about creating the calculator. Okay, the look of the calculator. So that's something which is static. However, I have something which is called onClick. Yeah. So when I click on this button, so this button is button which has a value of 8, and that is the size of my button. When I click on it, I'm calling the JavaScript function. And it's JavaScript which is going to do the calculations. Okay? And the JavaScript function is here. So that's the start of the function. And as you can see, it's a proper programming language with if statements, for loop, variables, and all the rest of it. Okay? So that's one way of getting a dynamic website is to use a programming language such as JavaScript that your browser can read. Now let's look at another programming language, which is PHP. And let's go back on my website. I've created a web page called mimimiphp.php. So I'm changing the suffix now. It's not HTML, it's PHP. I click on it, and what is the dynamic part?
That's the current weather for now.
The weather. Okay. So what I'm doing, I'm going to to a database. I'm saying what is the weather now in London. I'm going to retrieve that information and display it automatically on my web page. And each time you are going to my web page, this work is going to be done. Okay? I mean, the temperature is not going to change much during this half an hour. Okay, so we are always going to get 15 degrees. Yeah? But it's something dynamic. Okay, so you can imagine that there you can retrieve what are the latest news, what are the results of the latest matches in the football league. All that you can put on your web page. Just by writing the proper PHP commands, you are retrieving all this information, and you don't have to type it yourself. The content is coming for free and is updated. Okay? So what happens if I'm looking at the source of this page? What am I going to see? Am I going to see PHP format? It's not PHP. I've asked for a PHP web page. My browser doesn't understand PHP. So the server has changed the page into HTML and has sent me an HTML page. Okay? So if I look at the source of this page, current weather in London, 15. You know, the HTML is not dynamic. So the server, which is provided the information, has looked for the temperature, found it that it's 15, has removed all my PHP, and have written the temperature is 15. And then my browser gets the HTML, and I'm displaying my page. Okay? So you can see there is no PHP in that page. So somehow it's good, because my PHP is secret. You would like to know how I did that? You cannot know. If it's in JavaScript, you just use the right button. And you can read all the information, how to make a calculator. If you want to know how to display that, you are not going to get it for free. Yeah? Okay, so in my PHP, I'm going to have a bit of programming, again, with some kind of function, get the weather, okay, and I'm going to extract the information I'm interested in. And within the body of my, because that's the header, and within the body of my content, I have just a line say, okay, display, echo, what is the weather at the moment. Okay. But actually it's calling these functions, which are going to connect to the right website. Which website am I using? Yeah. So I'm using the Weather Yahoo website. Okay. So I'm using what is called an RSS, Rich Site Summary. Okay, so that's allow me to get web feeds. So Yahoo is providing this service of providing feeds about the weather, about the news, about whatever you want. And if you ask Yahoo nicely, you can retrieve all that information and display it on your website. So that's the website of Yahoo, which show me that the temperature in London at the moment is 15 degrees. Okay. I could retrieve much more. I mean, I'm displaying on my website only 15 degrees, but I could display the temperature for the next few days. I could display that it's currently cloudy and all that stuff. All the information is available, and I could extract it using my PHP code. Okay. So I have this PHP file. What happens if I try to run the PHP file, which is on my local computer?
It won't work.
It will ask you to open it with the application.
So if I try to run my PHP file in my browser doesn't understand anything. My browser doesn't understand PHP. Okay? To run the PHP file, I need to upload it on a server which has a PHP engine. Okay? So my browser doesn't understand my file at all. Okay? But that's the actual PHP file, which gives you all the information, how I code it, how I get the temperature, and the PHP function. Yeah?
You could set up like a local server.
Yeah. If you want, you can install PHP on your machine, and then your machine will understand PHP. Okay? But most people don't do that. There is a server doing all the computation for you that keep your processor cool, and there is some big machine somewhere doing all the work for you and giving the results. Okay? Obviously, if you are a big PHP programmer, each time you want to test your code going to a server and going back is not very efficient, so you will need to install PHP on your machine. Okay? But during the course of this module, I will not ask you to install PHP. You can do it using the PHP server, which is provided with your hosting company. Okay? Your hosting company is providing you with PHP. Okay. So let's go back to WordPress. Okay. Because I told you, yeah, if we learn about HTML, CSS, and all that stuff, we were able to understand how WordPress works. Okay. So if you go, could you choose a theme called Simpler when you created your blog? Was it? Must have been one of the options. Okay. And if you look at, if now you go on your web server in your domain, and you look at the content of your space, you will discover that WordPress will have created PHP files, and we have created style files as well. Okay, so you will have chosen one style, and WordPress will have uploaded the style you have chosen, and will have created all the PHP files that are required in order to run your blog. Okay. So here, for example, is the style sheet of the Simpler theme. Okay, so you can see all the details, and they are going in much more detail than I did. They are looking at the borders, the thickness of the lines, about the margin, padding, and many things, so you can design exactly what you want. Okay, so you can imagine that maybe you are going to download style sheets from WordPress, but for some reason you don't like their colors. Just edit the file and change it, and you will get exactly the style you want. Okay. And here is the PHP of the blog, one of the PHP files that WordPress has created for your blog. Okay. And you can recognize that you have all these tags, which are HTML and other things. Okay, so I gave you an overview of what are the technologies that we have in a website. So what is important, and you have to see that there are two types of contents. There is a static content and the dynamic one. Statics is text, links, videos, pictures. Okay. Could be sounds as well. Then you have the dynamic one, which allows you to interact with the web page or automatically update it. So that's PHP and JavaScript. We have seen that PHP and JavaScript work differently. One, everything is processed on the server and you get back some HTML, whereas JavaScript is doing the processing on your machine. And then there is the issue of structure, and that's what HTML is done for. And then there is the issue of style, which is CSS. So for this week activity, you are going to create a web page from scratch. Okay. So we are not using WordPress or anything, just a simple web page. And I would like on this web page, I'll give you some instructions that I would like different type of titles, a bit of photos, some lists and stuff like that. Nothing dynamic at this stage. Okay. So you just have to worry about a bit of content, the HTML tags, and use CSS. Okay. Here I've provided some links to two environments which are very good if you want to study web-based languages. So you have the w3schools.com, and you have what is called the Code Academy. Okay. Code Academy is particularly good because you can type in a small window and automatically you see how it will, how your website look like. Okay, so it's very interactive and it's a very nice way of learning. Whereas W3 Schools is more standard type of tutorials. Okay, so best of luck for next week. Obviously, your web page needs to be uploaded on your domain so that I can check it.